Thank you, Kelly, for the introduction. And first of all, just like Kelly, I would like to thank every one of you who come here to be part of this event, Versatility 2023. For the customers who are already with us, we are thankful for your trust and business. For those of the customers who are yet not our customers, rather, we hope that you find the content valuable, enlightening, to go back and consider us as one of the serious vendors for any of your pain points. So thanks a lot for being here. With that, I'll start my presentation. First of all, I'm going to go over today's macro trends, what is, how we got there. We'll give you a little bit of a history lesson of where we were before to why we are where we are. Going to unified SASE, and then a little bit about our security, testing results, is how good our security is, and lastly, our customer advocacy scores. So first of all, what happened a couple decades ago was, all our applications were in the data center, networking and all the way to access those applications were done through VPN connectivity, primarily BGP, MPLS VPN. But over last 10 to 20 years, what has happened is more and more applications have moved to the cloud. The SaaS applications, so many of the applications have gone to the cloud, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's Microsoft 365, and you have adopted to get to those, you have adopted those applications for your day-to-day working. In addition to that, what happened in the last couple of years is COVID happened, and all of a sudden people got used to working from home, and that created yet another macro trend, which was hybrid work environment. So two things which have changed our life in the last 10 years is, one is the movement of application to the cloud from the enterprise data center to public cloud, or your adoption of SaaS application. And the second thing is hybrid work environment. So for both of them, whether it's hybrid work environment or whether you're going through network and branch transformation, we have the solution for both of them. And then going forward, you'll need hybrid connectivity to the cloud, because more and more applications are designed whereby they put different solutions in different parts of the cloud, and you need connectivity to them. So those are three things. And like Kelly said, a lot of us bring devices to the company which are BYOD. We also have adopted many IoT devices in the corporate environment, whether at home itself we use Nest, Alexa, so on and so forth. At work also we have similar kind of solution. So for that, you need security which is for the enterprise, as well as security which is provided by the service provider. So those are three macro trends for which Versa provides solution today, and we'll go one of them today. So the first thing is Versa Unified SASE. So when you look at today's CISO and how difficult their life is, they have to manage something like 70 odd security tools, and whether it be 75, 76, it doesn't matter, but it's a huge number of tools. The question is, how did we get there? What happens is every time an entrepreneur goes and gets funding from a venture capitalist, the venture capitalist is going to say, well, you got to focus on one problem, okay, and make sure that that is one problem you solve. So the entrepreneur goes and solves that one problem, and then he has to sell it. He goes to the CISO and says, please install my widget XYZ, and the CISO says, oh, I don't want to change my environment and all of that. The entrepreneur says, no, don't worry, just put my widget in line. I'm just going to be passive, and it's going to be defense in depth for you, okay? And all of a sudden, you end up with, over the last 10, 20 years, something like 70, 75 tools each CISO has to manage. That life has become very complex, okay? And you can't just simply figure out what is going on. It creates its own set of problems. In addition to that, if you look at Gartner's consolidation, their XDR and SASE trend survey report, 92% of the enterprises are indicating they are looking for vendor consolidation from 2022. So that is the background in which we come in, and our job is to simplify your infrastructure, provide better user experience, and also better improved risk posture. Okay, so the next thing is the adoption of cloud and work from anywhere essentially has brought a different set of requirements for access. Okay, and all those perimeter-based approaches have resulted in a patchwork of vendors, policies, and made people's life much more complex. And really, the perimeter-based approaches don't work anymore. So what is unified SASE? What is unified SASE? Unified SASE delivers network and security services capabilities such as SD-WAN, ZTNA, SWIG, CASB, and next-gen firewall as a service in a cloud-centric architecture. Second is it provides you a single unified management plane. No more of looking at 3-4 different panes of glass to manage the complete solution. It is, that's why our whole focus is how do we simplify, how do we reduce the number of panes of glasses you have to look at 75, 76 to much smaller number by providing a single pane of glass which covers different solutions. Third thing is consistent policy definition both for networking and security. You can't have solutions where in order to do one thing you have to speak Gaelic, if you have to do another thing you have to speak Scottish. It's just very hard to manage those things, and it creates its own set of problems like security misconfiguration and stuff like that. So we provide you consistent policy definition both for networking and security. Next is unified data lake. Why is unified data lake important? Because as you get data from multiple different functions, security functions, you get a holistic view if you have a single data lake. It is something like getting a 2D picture if you have every function having its own data lake versus a 3D picture which you get if you have a unified data lake. So that is extremely important for you to get a cohesive, correlated picture of what is really going on in your infrastructure, whether it be from security perspective or from network. Next is a single unified infrastructure of POPs. The reason we bring this up here is when you compare Versa with other vendors, or whether it be X vendor or Y vendor, what you'll find is if you look under the hood, many vendors have different infrastructure for private access versus different infrastructure for internet access. You may have different infrastructure for SD-WAN versus different infrastructure for SSE. We give you one infrastructure both for SD-WAN and SSE. And lastly, when you have one infrastructure, both for SSE as well as SD-WAN, all managed through a single pane of glass, then you don't get traffic inefficiencies. You don't get hairpinning of traffic. You don't get traffic going from one POP location of SD-WAN to POP location of SSE. So all of this, why is that important to you? Because if you have these traffic inefficiencies, your user experience is not going to be good. So that is the other aspect you should know of on the unified SASE offer. Let me just get some water here. So this particular graph, what I would like to go over the next few charts is, what are the different ways folks integrate different functions of SSE and SD-WAN. And it kind of builds the story of why unified SASE is important to you. So on the category, you have things like whether you have a single management plane, whether you have consistent policy for networking and security, whether you have a single data lake, whether you have a singular infrastructure for POPs to for both the supports of all the functions. And lastly, whether you have traffic routing inefficiencies. And on the right is what matters to you. Is my OPEX going to be higher because I choose this particular way of managing vendors or selecting vendors? Or is my TCO going to be higher? Or is my user experience not going to be great because I selected a solution which is put together with multiple vendors? And lastly, is my risk posture going to be good or not? So in this case, I'm going to kind of give you a real example to put some kind of color to this example here. So essentially what happens is that in this case, let's say you could have a SD-WAN from VeloCloud, and you can have ZTNA and Swig from Zscaler. You can have CASB from Netscope, and all of these are service chained. And the SD-WAN traffic is generally tunnel. It's just basic there is a tunnel created from a branch to the POP location of SSE, and that's the type of basic limited integration you got. Now, why is that not so great? Is because first of all, you have many panes of glass that just increases your OPEX. Second is you have different ways of selecting programming policy, whether it be for ZTNA versus SWIG versus CASB, just increases your security posture, reduces your security posture. The second is your network and security policy definitions are different. That creates increased OPEX. And lastly, because you don't have a singular data lake, you have higher TCO due to lack of end-to-end analytics and visibility caused by inconsistent data lake and data models. And lastly, you have the infrastructure and POPs which are different. That causes higher TCO. So I'm going to go over this, and the next example now is about two vendors who've done data plane integration. So this is, let's say you use Zscaler for SSE, and they have Zen API. You program to Zen API, and what it'll do, what it'll provides you at a minimum is it'll steer the traffic to the least loaded SSE POP location from Zscaler. So that is the type of integration that is called data plane integration. Again, similar kind of issues. You will have two panes of glass to manage, so higher OPEX. You will have different ways of managing networking versus security policies. You will have different data lakes, so you're not going to get a highly correlated data model. And then you'll have different POP locations, and that causes its own traffic inefficiencies, hairpinning, and so on and so forth. So this is the second approach, data plane integration. SD-WAN vendor is using Zen API or some API from the SSE vendor to integrate at the data plane level. The third is what I would say portfolio approach. Here what happens is that a bigger company acquires, let's say, another startup. So in this case, Palo Alto acquires CloudGenix, and it does management plane integration. So in this case, what happens is that a reasonable portion of vendor one solution is managed by vendor two, mostly telemetry and performance. But ideally, what you would like is all the stuff which is managed from all the functions of the vendor one management plane be managed by the vendor two management plane. But that's not possible. So what they do is they provide you bare minimum integration at a management plane level, and this is what we call portfolio approach. Here again, you have you will run into the same things, higher OPEX due to inefficiencies created by disparate UX. You would have weakened security posture because your network and security policies are different. You would have more than one data lake, and that means you can get end-to-end correlated data model. And then you will have different infrastructure for POPs and so on and so forth. So this is what we call portfolio approach. What Versa gives you is a platform approach, a single pane of glass to manage SD-WAN and SSE and all the functions of SSE, whether it be ZTNA, SWIG, CASB, DLP, you name it. A next-gen firewall as a service. It gives you the same way of managing security or constructing security policy versus networking policy. So you're not learning different languages for one versus the other. It gives you unified data lake so that you essentially get a 3D image of what is really going on in your network, so you can make the right decisions as far as the events that are happening in your network. And lastly, we have one infrastructure of POPs, and that gives you lower TCO, and also there is no real traffic inefficiency like hairpinning and traffic going from one POP location to the other POP location. So those are generally 4 approaches you'll see. One is bare minimum integration, which we went over, just a tunnel route from SD-WAN to SSE. Second is data plane integration. You call somebody's API, so and steer the traffic from SD-WAN to the least loaded SSE POP location. The third thing is management plane integration, where there is an integration done at the management plane, but everything else is separate. And lastly, the platform approach, where everything is unified, and that's what Versa has provided. As like Kelly said, our job is to simplify your life and simplify your infrastructure. So why Versa Unified SASE? So the first thing is it provides you improved risk posture. Why is it providing improved risk posture? The important thing is this. Let's say, take example of United States. Okay, if we have different borders to kind of protect, then all of a sudden we just need fortification on all 4 sides, 2 oceans and north and south. In the case of a unified SASE thing, you are using only one code base, okay, and in one code base is what you have to protect. But if you are going to have multiple functions doing different things, in other words, you have different vendors doing different functions, then all of a sudden your number of code bases increases. Every code base will have its own vulnerability, and that causes decreased risk posture. Okay, so that's one thing. Second thing is, because there is so many vendors you're managing, there is a higher probability that you will do misconfiguration in one vendor versus the other vendor. That creates a security hole, and because of that, the posture comes down, risk posture comes down. So essentially, by having unified SASE, you end up getting improved security posture. Second is improved operational efficiency. In this case, what happens is that your deployment cycles are going to go much faster, because you're dealing with one code base, one single pane of glass, one data lake, and one set of infrastructure to deal with. So it is much faster deployment cycle from a perspective of operational efficiency. Second is that it just reduces the amount of skill set needed, and thereby it reduces your OpEx, because now you don't need 5 sets of people who are experts in one vendor versus the second vendor versus the third vendor, and so on and so forth. You have one set of folks who know one vendor, and that's all you know. That's all you required for unified SASE, compared to a situation where you'll end up with multiple vendors and you need skill set for managing each and every vendor. So that just increases your cost. The third thing is redundant lack of, in unified SASE, you don't have any redundant capabilities. There are, why we bring up these redundant capabilities, because what happens is that many times your on-premise security vendor will also provide you ZTNA, while if you have unified SASE, then everything is in the cloud. You really don't need, you don't have replication of some of the SSE functions between on-premise and in the cloud. And lastly is improved user and administration experience. There what happens is that because there is a single set of infrastructure and single set of POPs, you're not going through any kind of traffic inefficiency, and thereby it reduces the latency and you get better user experience. Second is that because there is only one unified data lake, then what happens is all the event logging, reporting and alerting is going to that data lake, and it provides you one cohesive view of what is really going on in your network. Third thing is you get single SLA commitment from the unified SASE vendor. You're not going to have different, each vendor pointing finger at the other guy, oh, it's not my problem, it's his problem or something like that. You have single throat to choke with a unified SASE vendor. And lastly, because one vendor is providing you total solution, it's easy to control the end-to-end user experience versus if you have disparate vendors. So those are some of the reasons why unified SASE offer should be important to you. But all is not rosy on the Western front. There are challenges to unified SASE. One is, in your companies, there will be organization silos. You'd have networking guys having their favorite vendors. You'll have security guys having their favorite vendors. And what happens is that just creates friction in trying to adopt one common approach, which could be unified SASE. But I think what we request both the teams is to come together and set aside your favorite vendors and look at a problem in a very disinterested manner and select the right vendor. Second is existing investment. Maybe you already have hardware you have installed on premise to provide you security, and you need to wait until all that hardware is depreciated. So that is the second aspect of it, which is existing investment. And the third is global coverage. Now, this one doesn't become an issue now. In the past, it used to be that some vendors will not have POP location in certain continent, while other vendors will have POP location in other continents. And what would happen is that there was not a single vendor which covered globally, and if your organization needed global coverage, then you were hard pressed finding a vendor, but that's not the case anymore. Secondary challenges is service maturity. Many of you will think that, oh, how can one vendor provide best solution which is like the best of breed for SD-WAN, for SWIG, for ZTNA, for CASB. My suggestion to you is give it a try for any vendor who brings the complete unified SASE solution, and you'll find that it is possible to find extremely good solution which serves your purpose. So I suggest keep an open mind on that. Okay. So where is the industry going? The Gartner study, which they found in the we call in the market guide for single vendor SASE report, shows that by 2025, 33% of new SASE deployment will be based on unified SASE, and 80% of enterprises to adopt strategy for unifying web, cloud services, and private application access. 65% of enterprise will have consolidated individual SASE component in one or two vendors. And lastly, 50% of the SD-WAN purchases will be part of unified SASE offer. So that's what Gartner is predicting by 2025. However, we already have a unified platform here today, and we hope that you give us a try and see whether we check all your requirements. So that's where we are. Now, how good is our security? And a lot of people will say, well, how good is Versa security? And normally, unlike Gartner, which is more of a marketing study, believe it or not, there are labs who do in-depth security testing. When you look at their reports go into 30, 40 pages of different kinds of testing they make the software go through. And we submit our software to this lab. These are not pay for play. A lot of vendors are part of this. And Cyber Ratings is one of those labs. And here in 2021, we were rated as good as any other major vendor that you've known about for security. It is not just 1 year. This year, last year in 2022, again, we did pretty well in the cloud network firewall ratings test. Now, this vendor doesn't have yet the SASE testing done yet. In other words, the test profile is not available yet. But this year, they're going to go through another set of I would say, vendors who can put their offer through their SASE test, but it's going to come out maybe towards the later part of this year. So essentially, our security, Versa security is as good as any security out there. So you should be rest assured about the quality and the depth of our offer. And lastly, customer advocacy. When we just got Series E funding, and when we were going through Series E funding, one of our investor, unbeknown to us, hired McKinsey to do a study of what do customers think about us and our support and our offer. And they essentially, McKinsey went to about 306 enterprise customers. And those enterprise customers were of different vendors, whether it's Kato, Ariaka, Civilpic, Palo Alto, so on and so forth, which I mentioned here. And based on that, they figured out the NPS score of each and every one of those vendors. And you can see we were rated the highest. And this is not something we paid for. This is some investor who, because they're going to invest money in the company, they hired McKinsey to do this study. And not only that, among security buyers, okay, our NPS score is also very high, 58 versus 33 on the networking buyer, and current users give us 50 NPS score. Anything above 30 is exceptional. So you can see that our support, our offer for both security and networking is extremely good. With that, if you have any questions, I'm going to pause here.
Love what you guys are doing as far as getting everything to a single pane of glass. I agree you're definitely reducing the risk exposure when you're getting to a single code base, but you're also exponentially increasing the impact of an exposure. So I guess what are you guys doing as far as I'm sure you guys are aware, but to make sure a single pane of glass doesn't become a single point of failure?
So first of all, let me just qualify this. Even though we feel that the single pane of glass and everything is very important to you, we will play with any other vendor. Okay, you could use our SSE with somebody else's SD-WAN. You can use our SD-WAN with somebody else's SSE. So we don't force you into using just one, our offer alone in terms of unified SASE. But if you are using unified SASE, and your question is, how do you make sure that your single point of glass doesn't become the single point of failure, right? Extremely good question. So first of all, there are two aspects to it. One is the software itself. Are you protecting it properly or not? The software itself, that you are not getting. Have you done proper penetration testing of your software? And every 6 months, we provide, we submit our software to be penetrated tested by NCC Group in UK, just to make sure that our software is solid and we've covered all the vulnerabilities of our own software. Second is from a reliability perspective, we even for our single pane of glass itself, we have geographical redundancy, and we just don't have active standby, but you can have multiple. We call it cluster mode, so you can have multiple nodes backing up each other, so that if one nodes go down, there is all the information in multiple other nodes, so that you can still carry on your business. So that's what we do in terms of making sure there is redundancy. The third aspect of it is scalability. Okay, and scalability itself, again, we have by having this multiple node architecture, and on top of that we have divide and conquer. So we have 2-layer architecture. We have the top layer single pane of glass, and then underneath that we have another set of nodes which do smaller kind of smaller number of sort of users they support. By having hierarchy in the single pane of glass, you get much more scalability of what you can do. Okay. Thanks. Any other questions?
Hey, Kumar, you mentioned NPS score. How is NPS score calculated?
Well, so that's a great question. So NPS score, essentially what happens is that, and there is a formula there in the web, but bottom line is that people rate you from 0 to 10, and then essentially anything below 6 is not counted at all, or no, anything like 7 or 8 is not counted, because that's like, okay, it's neither here nor there. It's just it's just average score. But 9 or a 10 versus 4 or 5 is counted. So for 5, 6 is all negative scores. 8, 9, 10 is positive scores, and based on that, there is a formula. You can look it up, and that's how the NPS score is counted. Now, the important thing is when you look up the Net Promoter Score, any score above 18 to 20 is exceptionally good, and it is just what our customers think about us in terms of our offer. And by the way, one other thing I wanted to point out is that our security is being used by our service provider, and through our service provider, it is used by many enterprises. It's just that we are white labeled by the service providers, so our brand is not in front of the customers. But we have been used for our security for all the secure SD-WAN which the service providers are deploying out there. Most of our service provider customers deploy our security. 90% of our secure SD-WAN sale go with security.
Obviously, SASE covers a lot of different security tool sets. So is there any component of that that you are partnering with a third-party provider for, or is it all in-house developed?
So as far as, that's a great question. I think first of all, for the malware sandboxing, we are OEMing IP from a Swiss company, okay? So that is that is something which we are using third party there, but it is sort of white labeled by us, so you would not make out that it is really third party there, but it is third party IP there. So we have, what happens in malware sandboxing is we have multiple malware sandbox. 2 of them are done by us. 1 of them is done by the third party, which is a Swiss company. So that's where we have partnered with the third party. The other thing is EPP, EDR, XDR, all of them we are white labeling somebody else's IP, and it could be CrowdStrike for EPP, EDR, and XDR. Then there is SIM and SOAR again, which could be multiple vendors we support there. So on those front, yes, we have other partners whom we are working with. On the malware sandboxing, we are using somebody's commercial IP, but the rest of it is developed by us.
Sir,
Go ahead.
Sir, my name is Sean, and I'm from Colt. And I would like to understand that the journey so far has been excellent. What do you see going forward, the challenges, and any tidbits from the roadmap that you may be working on?
Sorry, what is the question? Can you repeat it one more time?
So the question is that the journey so far has been excellent. We have seen the emergence of SASE solution suite that you have provided, but what are the challenges the enterprise IT security you think are the future, and what your roadmap is aligned to address those?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, so we looked at security on-premise. We looked at security in the cloud, right? There is security also to be provided in the public cloud through micro-segmentation and macro-segmentation. And also, as people are using more and more of applications in the cloud, you need cloud security posture management, you need cloud workload protection. As people are using SaaS applications, you need SaaS security posture management. So those are few things which is on our roadmap. We are working on that. Then there is micro-segmentation and macro-segmentation itself within the cloud, which is also we are working on that. And lastly, in the campus itself, what happens is that there is in the campus right now, what happens is segmentation, all of is provided through VLANs and all of that. So we are bringing that whole ZTNA concept deeper into the campus, and we're going to call it universal ZTNA, whether it's ZTNA provided as part of the SSE versus ZTNA provided within the campus itself, and you get the same kind of look and feel which you're used to. You get the same visibility which you're used to when you use ZTNA in the cloud. We'll be providing you in the campus. Now, not only that, the other aspect of it is what happens is today within the LAN environment, nobody gives you your access is not based on what your device posture is. Have you upgraded to the latest AV? Have you upgraded to the latest Windows or whatever it is? What we are going to bring to the campus is that the type of access you will get will also be based on, what is your device posture, even though you may be on the LAN. And then your access will also change. Your access to what applications, whether it's critical, supercritical, less critical, will be based on how well you yourself have patched your host machine by using the latest AV, by using the latest operating system. Okay, and then a little bit further down, we will have our own EPP and EDR, but it's probably another year and a half, 2 years away. Any other questions?
I got one back here. As Versa scales in the SASE market, where you're even seeing in some of the charts that you displayed, but some of your competitors in the SASE market, as solutions have been adopted, have struggled to scale performance as more customers have been onboarded. What is Versa doing to prepare for that scalability as adoption continues to increase?
I think that's a great question. So first of all, scaling is on multiple levels, right? Whether your management plane scales, whether your data plane scales, and whether your DLP cloud will scale, so there are different. Scaling is a very complex term in terms of what aspect of the solution you're looking at. Now, in terms of the data plane itself, one of the things we do obviously is as soon as our node in the cloud is 50% spoken for, then we go ahead and deploy another node and have a load balancer in the front, spray traffic to one of the different nodes at the same POP location. That's one thing we do. However, going forward, one of the things we are also doing for every node itself, we are planning to put hardware assist in terms of the NVIDIA has cards out there. We are trying out different things in our lab that could improve the throughput, especially for HTTPS traffic, by almost 5 to 6 times. So that just one node itself can support a lot of stuff. Second thing we do is, let's say you suddenly get a flash traffic to one of our POP location where all the nodes which we have are all fully occupied. Then what we do is we instantiate another node location in the public cloud automatically, and then all the new traffic will be redirected to that public cloud location, so that the folks who are there on our location in Equinix can get good experience, and the new people can also get good experience by going to the public cloud. Now, why not go all the time into public cloud? Why not put all the nodes in public cloud? If you did that, then the economics will be so bad that you will not get the right value from the solution if everything was in the public cloud. So the way we try to get best of both worlds is all our POP locations are mostly in Equinix, and then whenever we need certain capacity, which we thought, let's say there's a flash traffic of some kind, then what essentially we do is we instantiate one of our node in the public cloud, let it absorb all the extra load, which is coming. And then once that extra load dies down, then we kind of retire that particular node in the public cloud, and so that's how we have multiple ways to handle that. First of all, first I talked about on the hardware side, we are trying to bring in some of the latest innovation from NVIDIA so that it increases the throughput of our node itself. And second is automatic instantiation. And the third thing is essentially have, as soon as we are 50% full, we get additional server at that location so that they can be load balanced. Okay.
So Kumar, for customers who are using perimeter security with a vendor like Palo Alto or Fortinet, could they replace that with a Versa client?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, you mean the endpoint security client?
So yeah, so for customers who are using perimeter security with vendors such as say Palo Alto or Fortinet, with your NSS lab ratings, could they now replace that with a Versa appliance?
So just so that you know, you can replace Palo Alto's Global Connect or Fortinet's VPN client with our client. But if you are using their AV, then right now you cannot replace that AV with us. We don't have an AV capability on the host itself right now. So that's the endpoint protection. Okay. Firewall, absolutely yes. Yes, absolutely. You can replace Palo Alto or Fortinet with our next-gen firewall on the premise or in the SASE cloud. Either one of them is possible for you. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, we chatted about a lot of the folks in the room using Versa perimeter security in their SD-WAN nodes, but the topic of do you see more and more of the policy enforcement moving to the cloud versus on-prem?
So that's a great question, Clint. First of all, is the on-prem security going away? I don't think so. It'll stay there for some time. Why? Because the on-prem security provides you macro segmentation. You want your finance folks protected from some other set of functions because of the criticality of the data they're working on. So that macro segmentation, which the firewalls provide on premise, will stay. Second is that with SD-WAN, you expose the branch to the internet. So all of a sudden now, you could get DOS attack from the internet. So you really need some set of something on the premise to protect you from DOS attacks. So that is another on-premise security can provide you that. Other than that, I think when it comes to other functions like next-gen firewall as a service or whatever it is, you can move it. You definitely will be better off moving it to the cloud as time progresses, simply because then you have covered both angles. The teammate who's working from home or working on the road, as well as the folks who are working on the branch, all three sets can go to the security in the cloud and get that service from there. Okay.
So, sorry, Jason. So, from branch perspective, when you're talking about like we can use SD-WAN box for as a parameter security point, but do you provide? Thank you. So, do you provide NAC services integrated with the identity management on the LAN side of his stuff?
So we think that going forward, NAC will become obsolete and will be replaced by universal ZTNA. So right now, we do interoperate with Forescout and such vendors on the NAC side, but we ourselves don't provide you NAC services. Okay, but we think that fast forwarding another year or two, I think those NAC services will go away and they'll be replaced by universal ZTNA nodes.
Okay, and sorry, from service edge
and first of all, on the other thing is on the identity management, I think we do support third party like Ping and Oktas and all of that who provide that as a service. We do support them in our software.
Okay, The other question is related to the service edge. So, do you partner with the cloud providers also? Because some of the times I find that they have their own, inherent solutions, and it's always a difficult competing mode that as a customer.
True, true. No, that's a great question. So you're talking about, say, example of Microsoft, which
Yeah.
provides its own CASB solution.
Yeah.
Do we partner with them? We are in the process of having the conversation, but it's very early stage. Right now, we don't have a well-defined relationship with Microsoft on, when you buy their level 5 license, they combine the Windows Defender with the CASB solution, all of that. Right now, we don't have we are still in very early conversation, but it's towards that goal so that we can partner with them.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Thank you. So, can you hear me? So transformation, right? It's not just technology transformation we are talking here. We are talking about organizational transformation also, right? So in past, if you go back 20 years, 15 years back, right, there was only one networking team who managed firewall and, parts of security and networking technology, and things split then. And now we are talking about, again, reconsideration of transformation, right? How you see in the industry and companies are adopting this, and what are the challenges, what are the major challenges they are facing, and how you guys helping them out?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a human problem, unfortunately. So what we are seeing is when you look at unified SASE, we see least amount of friction with medium enterprises because they never had those two functions separate. As we get to the large enterprises, what we are seeing is we are seeing consolidation, by the way, of networking and security team into one, and sometimes the power goes into the networking side, sometimes it's gone to the security side. We've seen both the angles, to be honest with you. And then sometimes they also come together and work as a team. But I don't think that the whole journey of those two functions coming together has been played out, but it is beginning to play out. And maybe 4 years or 3 years down the line, you will have one function for networking and security and not separate functions. But for now, I think you are seeing in the mid enterprises, you don't have that problem at all. But in the larger enterprises, some forward-looking enterprises are putting those teams together, and some which are still working towards that goal. So I would say that is a work in progress there. Yes.
I just had a question about some of those charts you showed based upon price per meg and what you offer. We're getting more and more of our customers interested in large bandwidth pipes, multi-gig, 10 gig plus at times. In those situations, they're almost forced forced to pick and choose what security features to allow because the hardware can't necessarily support the throughput. You already kind of mentioned the plan to look into some new technology to allow greater throughput. I was just curious about those charts. Do they take that into account? Because once you get into those large boxes, they're not cheap, right?
Yeah, so those testing charts you saw, right, that doesn't account for the hardware innovation which is coming online. By the way, there is hardware innovation from two angles we are working on. One is with Intel. Their Sapphire Rapids cheap CPU set will definitely bring in hardware acceleration for security. So that's one thing. And the second is we are working with NVIDIA cards that also will bring in another set of innovation. And sometimes what happens in the valley is that the hardware guys from NVIDIA must envision a certain way of solving the problem. Then they work with startup like us to learn how to do a proper job so that they can flawlessly be deployed by people like us. So right now it's just that back and forth happening. I still think that, for example, we were thinking that, oh, we'll have that hardware innovation out there by end of last year, okay, 2022. But I feel right now the realistic date is end of 2023, that when we'll have that hardware innovation out there in the open for people to make use of. But it's a very iterative process. Our hardware, our low-level software engineers work with NVIDIA engineers, and then this back and forth. We have meetings every week, and they then go ahead and tweak their software and tweak their hardware and come back again. And, that's how it is. As far as Sapphire Rapids is concerned, it doesn't bring the same level of hardware innovation which NVIDIA is bringing, but it does bring in fair bit higher than where we are right now. Okay, that I think will come out much faster than the other things. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I got one more. As you guys are going to be the owner of the data lake, right? You guys are going to have all the data. Do you guys envision yourselves kind of removing the need for a standalone SIM?
So I personally think that the standalone SIM and SOAR, the need for it will probably go away once the XDR solutions come into the picture. So I think over time, yes. We right now don't have SIM or SOAR or XDR offer. We are white labeling somebody else's right now for XDR, EDR, and EPP.
But eventually,
yes,
you guys will get to the point
right.
where all the data will be there.
Absolutely right. But remember one thing, the other thing also is the SIM supported multi-vendors. Once you have multiple vendors, then all of a sudden, the SIM requirements increase in that perspective. That's why the XDR part, doesn't just support one vendor, which is EDR, but XDR supports multiple vendor, and that's basically where we are headed, but not this year, sometime next year. Okay. Okay, that's it.
I see you have some of your vendors up there. What's the lead time on hardware today, and where do you see that going in the next year or so for supply chain issues?
So first of all, luckily all the supply chain issues are behind us. However, for me to confidently remark on that, what is the lead time?
So the ecosystem is getting a lot better. There's some vendors like Dell that'll be able to provide hardware on a very short notice. We just heard from Lanner yesterday that they've got devices in stock. The CSG branded appliances, the lead times have come down dramatically. So there's a backlog. People are working for the backlog, but I think by the middle of this year, it'll all be caught up, and you'll be able to get to normal lead time, which should be in a few weeks, not tens of weeks. So I think we're on the recovery side.
Okay, any other questions? All right, cool. Thanks a lot.